5.
Are we streaming?
4. 3. Do we have to all clap to synchronize?
Technically.
Yeah, no clapping. No clapping in this
I
one.
love that part.
Technically, we can
Yeah,
help.
there we go. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Close
so-
your eyes and clap.
All right, we ready?
All right,
Yeah,
we're ready.
I
Oh,
think
we're
so.
on.
I mean, we're live, so we have to be
We're,
ready.
we're,
I
yeah,
don't think we have a choice.
Are we really live though?
we are really live.
He's watching us.
Hello.
It's really weird.
That's creepy.
Hello and welcome to the MacAdmins Podcast, presented by VMware. VMware Workspace ONE empowers you with full macOS lifecycle management. Get past the hassles of legacy imaging with faster modern onboarding. Easily deliver all your native Mac app packages as well as software as a service and virtual Windows apps, and empower users with one-click single sign-on. Stay on top of your security needs with complete encryption management and rich conditional access. The recognized industry leader, Unified Endpoint Management Solution, is your one-stop shop for all Apple devices and apps. Learn more at workspaceone.com. And thanks very much to VMware for sponsoring this podcast. So hello, I am Tom Bridge. I'm a partner at Techvolutionary in Washington, D.C., and I'm joined by Diana. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
And you have an amazing new title in the show notes, and
yeah.
I would love to hear more about it.
I made it up about 10 minutes ago.
Excellent.
And it's, what did I put? Oh yeah, that's great. Security culture lead, which is valid, let's be honest.
Okay, fair.
You know, it's the same thing that I told you last time, but I'll tell everybody who doesn't listen to the podcast regularly. At Shopify, we have a security culture team of one, which is me. And we care about teaching people the right way to be secure. It's great. Yeah.
That's important. So thanks for coming along today. And we also have two excellent guests. Joel Rennich, I think this is your green jacket appearance on the MacAdmins Podcast. Joel Rennich is the chief instigator at Orchard and Grove, also known as the Sparkling Blonde Americano. Or at least that's what the show notes say. I don't have any control. I just
He
read
has
what's
to
in
tell
the
us a little
notes.
bit about it now.
Well, you know, there's various social media things about find out your whatever name. And this is your coffee name, right? If you were a coffee drink, what would you be? And Starbucks actually had a sparkling blonde Americano.
Well, you were sparkly and you're
And
blonde.
I'm blonde and I'm an American.
And it works out okay.
I mean, it's the whole thing. And Americano sounds a little bit more, exotic.
Okay.
Sure. We'll
Yeah,
cover it.
that works out well. And thanks for sharing.
Well, happy to be here.
Carry on now.
And we're also joined this week by Dana Campbell, the Global IT Manager for Slack. Dana, thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first-time caller. And I do things at Slack.
There you go.
It's fun.
And that's fun. And so I think on behalf of this entire room and the 6,000 people, 6,000 is a little small, let's call it 15,000, which is 18,000,
Watching
which is
right
where we
now?
are. Well, I mean, that's the number of people
Possibly
in
they
the
could
MacAdmins
be.
Slack.
Yeah.
So, and for which, we're incredibly grateful for all of Slack's
You can't prove they're not
community
watching.
support. So,
That's very true.
which is awesome. So.
We love
Happy
you, Dana.
And of course, last but not least, our Mat X from MacDevOps YVR. Matt, how are you today?
Number 3 of 2 good guests you said we had.
Well, I had to save the best for last.
And
It's like,
so it begins.
I know English is my second language, but I heard that.
Sincerest apologies, Matt. Clearly an oversight on my part. So Matt, tell us how day 1 went. What did you think so far?
I have no idea.
You're just along for the ride?
We should ask the crowd
Yeah,
how they
yeah.
think.
So
they
to go.
Good first day?
Clap. Yeah. Very nice.
I was honestly surprised anyone showed up, but
But no, really good crowd today, and from all over Canada, the United States, the world.
yeah, mostly the States and the world, and some Canadians too. Yeah.
Who
No.
traveled the farthest?
I think it's a competition between Henry, the 1,000 million miler, who's traveling around the world to give talks about. I'm not sure what he was talking about.
It
Terrible.
was Brew and
It was
Stu.
great. Yeah,
and,
of course. But no, Stephen Quirk from ThoughtWorks. Woo!
Yeah.
And Henry. Yeah, they're in competition. There's the Europeans and lots of Americans. I mean, I tried to build a local conference, but people have come from all over. I think this is an amazing community.
Oh, it's a great city. Everybody wants to come here.
Vancouver's pretty
Right.
amazing. I flew in on the flight. We landed around like 9 o'clock last night, and of course the sun's still out because we're so far north. And well, I mean that's how that works in the summertime. The sun's out late and
Can
whatnot.
you get further south in Canada?
Yes.
Well,
Not by much.
They call it the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, which is really interesting because used to call this area like the lower mainland. So it's really south for us, but really north for those crazy Americans in Seattle.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But we had some great light coming in, and lots of really pretty pictures as we flew over the Rockies. So
I took so many mountain photos.
Yeah,
I was just like, I need to pause this random episode that I'm watching and just stare out the window. Oh,
yeah, seriously.
You guys
No,
taking
don't
the
see mountains.
My mom's
SkyTrain?
calling.
Everyone take the SkyTrain in, Dana?
Yeah.
Oh,
Got
you should answer your
lost.
mom.
No,
Hey, I'm on a live
that'd be
podcast.
weird.
Yeah, I don't think Mom needs to be on the podcast.
No.
I mean,
we need to get a GDPR consent form first.
Yeah, exactly.
that's a subject near and dear to everybody's heart right now,
Yeah.
and maybe not so near and dear to so many others. But it's certainly something we've all now survived, at least until we find out how the implementation has gone, until the first lawsuits hit.
Until
right?
the fines come in.
Yeah, until the fines start getting out. We made it! Yay! We survived as an IT community. So I really did want to talk a little bit about what we're hearing out of WWDC, even though we're up here in Vancouver. There's been a lot of news trickling out of Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, which is still ongoing. We're recording this on the Thursday evening of the WWDC week. There's been, obviously the keynotes on Monday for the public keynote, and then the State of the Union. And then we've had, solid 3 days worth of sessions so far. Still more labs to come. But there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, and I kind of wanted to go through some of this with everybody, and kind of what people are seeing, what they're interested in, what they're concerned about. And it seems like Apple has, we got a new set of features with 10.13 that were focused around user consent.
Yep.
And it looks as if we're picking up a lot more user consent-based features in 10.14. And one of the things that I noticed when I installed the beta on my virtual machine was that there's a new set of tabs in the privacy dialog that will say grant permission to individual applications. There was one in there that I thought was particularly interesting, and it's systems administration. We don't have any idea about what's going in there yet. What are your thoughts? What do you want to see in that kind of user-accepted system administration kind of environment? So,
I'll just, that's funny enough, one of the few talks that I watched at WWDC when I had time to download it and watch it on the plane. I'm so excited, it's great. So I loved it though, because it was the in-depth talk on security of macOS features and of 10.14. And like the smallest thing that I really enjoyed out of it was the fact that yes, you're asking for more consent, and the best part was that they were during the talk they were like very vocal on telling the app developers to use the plist keys to say, tell your users why you're asking for this permission, and like I see that as like a big win for transparency and like privacy, and then I can see that aspect going into the whole system administration thing, like. As you know, default to open culture, running device management. Like, I would prefer having, some user consent on a device that explains exactly what I'm asking for and why I'm asking for it. And if you give me the tools to be able to do that, like, I'm sold. Like, I don't see it as a negative. I see it as like an
I think
open
that's
thing.
It's an immense positive because it allows you to essentially explain to your users, this is what I'm doing with your machine. This is why I have a management agent on your machine, and this is what we're opting you into as a safety measure. And this is why it actually is a safety measure. This is why it's actually useful. And I feel like there are a lot of management schemes that I see out there that are maybe a little bit. I don't want to use the word creepy because I feel like that implies a value judgment, but they're opaque.
Yeah,
and you don't necessarily know what they're doing, and that generates a lot of, it engenders some mistrust on behalf of your coworkers.
Yeah,
and I feel like
I agree, and I don't think it's very transparent to employees to not know what MDM has access to and doesn't have access to, and what a binary like Jamf or whatever device management has access to and doesn't have access to. Like, people are lost, and so it's just this black box. And like, if we can just get rid of those ways of thinking and like make it more clear, I think it's going to solve a lot of problems. So.
Joel, what did you think?
It's a really interesting concept that you can be root but not have access to everything. A basic paradigm in kind of the Unix and for the last 20 years Mac management facilities has been, as soon as you were root, there was no barriers to you. You could go into places. SIP came along and root can't edit some of these things anymore, right? But you can still see everything.
Yes.
And now we're getting into this interesting place where you may be root, but you're still not able to have access to stuff that's on the file system. And this does change the basic paradigm of the files, the volume, and what's in there. We're chatting about secure tokens tomorrow, because of course you want to do that. And I see the next progression is the user would have their own file encryption key that would encrypt. I mean, similar to iOS, just
Right.
iOS has never been a multi-user system, really. And so the user would have an individual encryption key for their files in their home folder. So it's no longer just even consent, it's you can't even physically access these files if you don't have that decryption key.
Right.
And that is a really interesting, I mean, as a consumer, as an individual, I like that. On the other hand, as an admin, that's a whole new way of doing things.
Right.
Backup changes, there's administration becomes much different. It's a very cool paradigm, but it's a different paradigm.
Yeah, and it's going to be very, very fascinating to kind of see how that approach plays out at scale instead of just at the one-to-one environment, which is where Apple tends to be focused around the consumer behavior. And so kind of expanding what we get consumer behavior-wise into large enterprise, or even medium enterprise or small business or micro business, which is a term that Alex was talking about today, which I think represents a lot of my clients. And I feel like there's strength in that platform because I feel like it allows you to treat your computer using staff as their own discrete adult objects. And, of course that requires them to make good decisions in some cases, and there may be consequences if they don't make good decisions. And that is something else to consider. So, Dana, what did you think of the concept of user-accepted anything or everything that we're starting to get to?
Yeah, I mean, at Slack, security, we say that security is everyone's problem. And, the more transparency, the better. When we're doing anything on, when we're controlling configuration profiles and whatnot, I mean, all of that is kind of listed and publicly available. Anything that kind of brings that to the forefront is definitely positive for us.
For sure. And one of the interesting pieces that Joel mentioned there was that there are now parts of the system that are no longer readable even to administrative users. One of those places is the users database. And so as part of all of that, we used to be able to, with essentially what amounted to a payload-free package, deploy a user to a machine as part of a deployment workflow, whether that's through Deploy Studio or some other method. And now you have a user with a hashed password on the box. That's going away as part of 10.14, or at least in early betas, it seems to be missing. Obviously, things are subject to change. We're very early days here on what Mojave is actually going to look like. Do you have any concerns about those kind of changes? I mean, in terms of your workflows?
No.
Yeah.
No. We don't deal with any user creation
Sure.
on our end.
Because you guys are all DEP at this point?
Yep.
And
Yeah, exactly. So I don't really. It does suck to feel like your hand is forced on whichever path that the future of this management goes. But I'm not too concerned in our environment. But I can imagine that in so many other environments, it is kind of a scary thing to not have that amount of control when maybe you do need it. But yeah, I can't really speak for any concerns I have over it. I don't know. What do you think?
We deal a lot now with enabling File Vault at the login window
Yeah.
and dealing with users and enabling multiple users for File Vault and things like that. And you're getting to a place, and it's not a bad thing, it's just, again, a different thing, where you're going to be unable to have a user be placed anywhere programmatically without knowing the plain text of their password.
Yeah.
Because even if you could still put that user in there, they won't be enabled for File Vault, so you don't necessarily have that backdoor admin capacity that you were hoping for. And at which point, the functionality of that kind of user being put on the machine goes away anyway.
Yeah.
So you now have to deal with this in kind of more creative ways. I mean, I'm hoping Tom's setting us up for the hack night, which is that we should be able to replace this.
Yes.
yeah.
I'm fairly confident, since we've tested a lot of our stuff with Mojo and it's been working well.
Mojo. It's good. Yeah. You gonna explain that one?
Well,
High C Mojo. You think
High
it's
C,
so
well,
cool?
Mojave, how High Sierra got his mojo back.
Oh, man.
You see it?
Yeah, I get it. I like it.
Please
Please don't throw
Mojo
things.
will stick.
Don't
Yeah.
throw things. Please.
Don't quit my day job. So we're very much looking at this as, we think through the Open Directory APIs since we're already creating accounts that way, currently, and it's very much working on Mojave, that we expect to be able to kind of replicate the functionality of the create admin user or Pi create user package without any problems. And this is another reason, and this is a reverse plug for the workshop I did yesterday. It's becoming more important for admins, and if it's not Swift, I kind of understand, but that's fine, to know at least some sort of programming language. Because shell scripting is going to be a lot harder to hit these APIs and to do some of these functions. And so being proficient with Python, with Swift, with Go, with some of these other languages that can hit those system APIs, you're going to become a lot more functional than just trying to put down hashes in particular places.
So thinking about that for a second, I ask purely out of selfish curiosity because I'm a middling shell scripter. I look at Python and my eyes glaze over, and I look at Swift and then I go hide and cry. Where do you start? Because I feel like interpreted, compiled languages like Swift. I mean, I suppose it's compiled.
It is.
Yeah, it's fully compiled. As opposed to interpreted languages, which I'm more used to, or scriptable language.
But
where do you start?
You're obfuscating the whole point in that whether you're Python, C, Swift, whatever else, you as the admin don't care if it's compiled or interpreted.
Right, right.
It's your ability to be functional, right?
Sure.
And I don't know, I hope we had a bunch of people in the Swift session, and I think we had some people who had never used it before that became somewhat functional in it by the time it was done. Certainly it has spoken to me. You need to find a scripting language or a programming language that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And it is much more personal than you would think. The way that you think, the thought patterns that you have, Python is very different from C, which is very different from Swift, for example. And so you want to find the one that your brain most closely matches.
Doesn't that take us back full circle to the MDM and the user approved everything? You said we want to be fully functional. We use scripting languages to automate tasks and for idempotence, make sure that the results are always the same. But if we're managing our environments and we have to use the tools that Apple gives us, which is MDM and MDM backed by dev,
Sure.
to get the white
MDM is just a pipe.
extensions.
MDM is just a pipe.
Of course, but if the pipe doesn't return any answers when you ask it questions and you
Well, then you write a different tool that the pipe talks to.
we're talking to the right people then.
Time to get creative.
Well, and that's kind of some of the place where a hack night like tonight is going to be super helpful, and where we can sit down and say, what are we missing as a community that is helpful? And one of the first things that came up was obviously let's figure out a way to have Swift talk to Open Directory, and let's figure out a way to deploy some users. Yep. So that's kind of one of the things I'm most hopeful about is that I feel like Apple keeps guiding us towards new solutions and taking away solutions that maybe have security flaws, because let's be honest, being able to deploy an admin user to a machine with a package that's 12 kilobytes and can be installed in the background is maybe not the most secure thing in the world. And so cutting off that path of attack forces us to do something a little bit more, auditable and controllable and things along those lines.
Because at the end of the day, not being able to mess around with the files that make up who you are as a user, your user account, other people on the machine, is a very coherent and positive thing for security.
Yes.
Completely, 100%. Partially because the potential for doing something poor, even if your intent is good, you could still mess things up pretty heavily. Sure. And so by using the APIs, you're a little bit protected because you're actually interfacing in a real way instead of just writing out P-lists.
Right.
So, I mean, this is all good, but again, it's a paradigm shift for us as admins that we're doing things differently. Like, do we care that we don't know what's in a user's home folder?
No.
I mean, GDPR would say we shouldn't.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure,
it's even easier if we can. And so that's all good. But hey, being a Mac admin is living in a changing world.
You have to adapt. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's actually the strength of being in IT is, with what Meg was talking about today about anti-fragility, and to essentially being able to train yourself into, okay, I can't do it that way. What's another way to attack this problem? What, to invoke the phrase of the MacAdmins community, generally speaking, what are you trying to accomplish? And finding out new ways to go after individual problems. I love this week because yes, it changes everything. And that has its drawbacks. And for example, I ran the 10.14 updater on my DEP tester VM. I made a copy first, don't worry, it's okay. It's not a production VM, it's fine. But my login window replacement from my IDP does not work at all.
They did it wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, just saying, we were fine.
Yeah, and I feel like that, yes, that is going to be a challenge that we have to help them overcome and deal with, and maybe I'll be talking with you a little bit later about another IDP. But, I feel like there's a lot of opportunity, and this is where growth comes from. And I feel like we cannot get stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again because we are going to miss where the next obvious developments are if we're not constantly made to readapt and re-confront our decisions. And yeah, sometimes we have to deal with things like secure token, which are in some cases exhausting to go through. But I feel like there's still a lot of potential for good moving forward, especially out of a week like this. So.
Oh yeah, I mean change is good, and especially as a community as healthy as the MacAdmin community is, with the number of people on the Slack and things like that. In particular, this conference, thanks to Matt for certainly putting it together. We have the horsepower in this room to be able to, adapt as we always have, with a lot of these open source projects to kind of fill in these gaps that allow for the administration of the machines to be even easier.
Yeah, like who remembers what they did 6 years ago?
Oh, geez, I don't want to remember.
You know what I mean? And like
that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when we were putting plain text passwords in shell scripts, right?
That's what I mean. It's just like, I don't know. I see it as an upward movement as well. And like, I also see it as like, if it takes you far away from, having Macs, then it does. Like, I think there's viable solutions to that as well. If it just doesn't work in your environment, like you don't feel pigeonholed anymore, feeling like, oh, like I just have to follow along. Like it gets you to think creatively, which is great in my opinion, solving problems and like I always say not reinventing the wheel because we have such a big community or whatever. But even if it doesn't, like there's other things out there if they work better. Like it gets you to think creatively outside of that ecosystem, right? Like there's no negative, I don't think.
Yeah. And I think that's good. So I'm going to pause for a minute and read a message from one of our fine sponsors. If you're like most people, your help desk is getting swamped with the same requests over and over. Spoke uses artificial intelligence to automatically resolve up to 50% of employee requests for you. Employees can ask Spoke questions over Slack, email, or SMS, and Spoke will provide an immediate, friendly response. No more, how do I connect to the printer? Or how do I reset my password? Or how do I connect to the VPN again? With Spoke, employees get what they need to stay happy and productive, and you get more time to focus on getting things done. IT teams using Spoke to get back up to 4 hours of productivity per week per agent. Visit askspoke.com/MacAdmins for a free 30-day trial. That's askspoke.com/MacAdmins. So thank you for that. And thank you very much to our fine friends at Spoke. Single user mode's going away in 10.14, or at least it's supposed to. And I mean, that seems like another security.
How much have you been using single user mode?
Yeah, I don't remember the last time.
I think I've been in there a few times, usually to clean up something that's gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, and show people like, oh, I can own your computer in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And exactly why it's going away.
I feel like all this is connected to the same, treat your users with respect kind of thing. Like they're entitled to their privacy, they're entitled to so I don't know, I don't use it.
FSCK, man.
Well, I mean, that is something that, but that's what the recovery volume is for.
I mean, without spinning Rust in there, you have less of a need for doing some of those kind of tools.
Sure.
And doesn't need FSCK, right?
Correct. It's perfect.
It's perfect and was born perfect and has never had a problem ever.
And the other thing that you would normally do with single user mode would maybe be back out of some things or reset the var.db.apple setup done or something like that.
Apple setup done, literally.
Yeah.
New admin user.
And that's getting much harder to do anyway. There's so much complexity to a lot of this stuff. You can't just walk in, grab one file, and magically have it replaced.
Now, I will note for the record, I've been live corrected by someone who would know better, and that's Mike Lynn from the Basis page.
Bring it.
Who says you can still get into single user mode from launchctl. It's just the hotkey with the Command S to get into single user mode that is gone. So
on the touch bar, you have to use it on the touch bar.
I don't know how it works on the iMac Pro. I'm assuming it doesn't. But yeah, it's, you can do it. It's sudo launchctl reboot -s, and then you would come back up into that. So
but you can't do it from a just walking up to
from
a
just
box.
a walk up to a box, and I think that
good, at least,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good troubleshooting tip.
Yeah.
I mean, if you need to get in, like,
If you need to do that, Nuke and Pave.
it's more monkey thin imaging.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, turning our attention briefly at least to iOS 12, iOS 12 seems to offer a lot of support for long-in-the-tooth devices. We're seeing, support for the exact same device configurations that we've had for iOS 11, including all the way back to like the iPad Air. That's got to be great for Edu and Corp on like a just a pure cost standpoint. But what aren't we seeing yet? What are the downsides to potentially supporting much older hardware like that you guys can see?
Pixel, sorry. Next person.
I still have an iPad Mini 2 at home, and I wish they supported that. But, still running for Netflix.
I would kind of love there to be another iPad Mini, to be quite frank. I love that form factor.
They were really good.
They were really good machines. So.
I mean, anything that gets people to, upgrade quicker, I think is a positive thing.
And absolutely, and especially with the performance increases geared at the low end, to kind of, bring some life back into those devices.
Yeah. If they can promise that, right? If they can make people feel like it's not going to slow it down, that's always the issue, where there's just this like negative attitude around that.
Sure, yeah.
I remember going into like the Bose store to get a pair of headphones, and like I go in, and he's like, "Do you have 5 minutes for me to update your headphones?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is such a pain. I never do my updates on my phone," and I'm just like, "Don't say anything, Diana." And then I'm like, listen. And then I just like gave him a stern talking to, and he's like, "What? No, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, you should probably do them. It's like the best way to be secure." And he's like, "Okay, I'll start them now." And I'm like, "Okay, bye."
Quick, let me run out of here
You've been
before I
back to the Bose
what
store?
happens.
No, I have not. I should. Anyways, yeah.
So in addition, one of the interesting features that comes out of, or at least that Apple was heavily touting, was the new notarization feature. And so that for those apps that are produced by developers, that are released by developers, that are not coming out as part of the App Store chain, Apple's basically offering a service for notarization. Now, Joel, you showed me that you have already submitted one of your binaries for notarization. What did you think of that experience?
I had nothing to do with it. It was amazing.
You make a copy, put it in, and then they go.
Yeah, Josh
right?
uploaded. It was back in 30 minutes.
Okay.
And we had the
You
notary
had your
stamp.
stapled ticket.
Stapled ticket.
And
Stapled ticket stamp certificate.
Sure.
Sealed with love.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and it does provide a nice additional benefit, right? Because I've not actually used it on 1014. But
Right.
then you have a little bit less of a gatekeeper overhead when you run it, because it's not only just a signed binary, but it's a signed binary that has been even more thoroughly approved.
right.
I mean, the trick is going to be, this is going to be a lot of overhead for Apple. It's presumably doing some sort of malware detection, static analysis of the code or something like that.
And apparently it also allows for certificate pinning and things along those lines to essentially add another layer of protection to your binary environment at that point. So I'll be very interested to see kind of how the auto package community responds to notarization, and what kind of workflows will be available so that you can say, hey, look, I've got a notarization. I want to see if the app's been notarized before I can download.
Looking at the number of hits our website gets from auto package, Apple may not have considered the automatic submission of auto package recipes back to be notarized before being then released to everybody's individual populations. And there may be a boatload of notarizations that happen of the exact same binary.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in terms of just like review of that?
Sure, right. Because if
process.
you're doing this for your users, you have an auto package recipe that's pulling a brand new app, which in my case, from at least what I can tell, is the same app, because we only update once every couple of a month or two.
Yeah.
Every month, let's be honest.
Well, every month. Well, it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
And then we get massive amounts of people have auto package checking on an hourly basis, it seems, for that brand new update. And so if those automatically then get downloaded, looked at, and then fed back up into the notarization service, that could be an awful lot of packages that are going through.
So the apps are checked every time you distribute them?
Well, if you want them to get it notarized by Apple and stapled, it wouldn't be every time you distribute it, but it's every time you pull down a new one. there'd be auto package would have a recipe that would determine the binaries changed.
Right.
And then you'd want to get that notarized. So if a Nomad update, if some sort of other update, Microsoft Office, there may be a large amount of apps that are submitted, the same app, may be signed slightly differently, but the same app submitted to Apple to become notarized for your own
Notarized by
internal.
the clients, like the devices, the endpoints, not
The notarization is verified by the endpoint. And so essentially it looks at the ticket that's been stapled and make sure that it's cryptographically sound and signed against the masters and of that.
But Apple does some introspection of the code, right?
Sure, yeah.
You send the binary up to Apple. It looks at it,
the
does some.
endpoints aren't sending every.
No, but your auto package host would be.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not by default right now. Like it's just sort of like if you want to, you can.
Correct.
But it sounds like it will eventually be sort of a requirement. So
It's
then
free?
when
Why
you get-
not?
Yeah, and when you get to that point
Yep.
and you have this much going through, yeah, that's something that should be considered. Like how are they going to deal with that load?
Yeah.
Not my problem.
Is there a colored JPEG on the website for notarization service on, or big glowing ball?
So we mentioned briefly new login window changes to 10.14. Do you have anything to share on what that looks like at this point? You're one of the closest people I know to the login window.
We were very pleasantly surprised. I mean, whenever you're a developer in the Apple ecosystem, you have to expect change. You just can't not, right? Otherwise, you end up with a crappy product. And there's a lot of things that we would love to see different in the login window. The login window is a fairly older piece of code. Some of the APIs and the documentation go all the way back to the 10.3 era, if that gives you any idea. So we were, I'm sure there's a German word for this, the joy of being surprised by something you don't want to have.
We need a mic on him. We'll come back later. I need to hear
we'll get
that
from
sentence.
you before we wrap tonight.
Yeah.
Because at the one hand, we were hoping that nothing changed. On the other hand, we were hoping that like a whole lot of stuff changed. And with the same time expecting to have to rewrite parts of our code to reflect that, but then possibly getting a whole bunch of new features that we've been expecting to, or interested in doing. The end result seems to be that for most, and I haven't delved deep enough into Mojave to truly get this, but a lot of the stuff under the covers in macOS was not significantly changed. The API differences between 10.13 and 10.14 are not huge. And for the login window, I was even more pleasantly surprised because previously in the 10.12 to 10.13 or 10.11 to 10.12, your authorization database would get nuked and would be reset back to the default state. And so we were kind of looking at, all right, we've got to have a binary that's going to be checking against the authorization database. And if that's changed, then we're going to have to re-put ourselves back into that. And it wasn't going to be impossible, but it was going to be a lot of overhead of just constantly checking the same thing. Pleasantly surprised when I updated from 10.13 to 10.14 with a system with Nomad login in it, I didn't have to do anything. And I was immediately able to log in with our login window. So that was, like I said, I'm sure German word for this. He's looking in the dictionary right now.
You need to know
for
this stuff.
being happy and upset at the same time for something not having changed,
Are you
but
writing
even
this
though
down?
you wanted it to change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I think that does. And it was interesting to hear Apple tout that and say, we rewrote the login window. Yay!
Well, I don't know if they said
Well,
that,
they said
right?
there was a new
Did they?
login window.
It was an item on a slide
Yeah, fair enough.
of like 85 other things. And I remember in Slack, somebody had taken a screenshot of it
what
and
is
with
this?
red lines, drawn around this couple of words on a huge slide of hundreds of words.
The
And
icon's bigger,
icons
Yeah.
are bigger, you have
Yeah.
a background
Yeah.
photo kind of
Yeah.
thing.
The time.
Can you log in with emojis now or something?
Oh, that would be
Probably.
really cool.
It would
The
not be a
custom
good
one that
idea
you
to
made,
put
the
emoji in your
Memoji or
password.
whatever.
Emoji, whoa.
Yeah. It's like
Wow.
another way of
Feature
facial
You
recognition.
stick
You
your
could
tongue
have
out
emojis
at
as a
computer and you log in.
Read your
I
tongue.
heard some
Tongue detection.
disturbing stuff about this tongue detection, but no.
Next topic. Next question.
Yeah.
Next discussion. So Swift. And so we get a new version of Swift
Yep.
in the
4.2.
new. Yep. And a lot of that's been changes that have been out in the community for some time. And
Yeah,
I mean,
the whole Swift update process is very transparent,
Yep.
being very community focused. And the 4.1 to 4.2 transition was not huge. There's some fun things with enums that will reduce my code quite a bit, which I'm excited about. and a few other little bits and pieces in there where you don't have to have some of these boilerplate factory functions to do just manipulation of strings and things like that.
Sure.
So that's exciting, but overall, I mean, Swift it's starting to grow up, and certainly the level of dynamicism in it is much lower than it used to be.
All right.
And that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's good. It's the process of the maturation of the language as that goes through there. And I think you're probably starting to see more Swift within the OS itself. Whereas prior to this, Apple had mostly done everything in Objective-C. And I think you're starting to see more Swift come into the basic Apple tools and things like that are in there. So, no, it's all good stuff there.
Awesome.
How many years until Apple's building everything 64-bit inside their own OS?
Well, DVD player got updated,
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's good news.
right? Because that was a 32-bit app before, and there was a lot of
Sure,
people
yeah.
questioning.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
was it going to
Last
survive?
time I opened
Yeah.
that was...
And we do get to bid adieu to the QuickTime framework,
Yeah.
which will go away in 10.15 along with Java 1.6. Yes! And I don't think
Oracle will still give you a download, though, right?
Still have to have a legacy download, no?
I hope not. They might give you a download. I don't know if it'll run or not. I mean, that's the
Just
question.
download
right?
for anything.
There's still so many apps in my environment that use that legacy Java. It's like crazy.
Gotta get rid of it.
Do I want to publicly shame all the current software
Yeah.
that uses it?
Live on YouTube right now. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it.
None of them are...
Internet Explorer.
We also lose OpenCL and a couple of other things that
You don't
nobody uses,
lose,
really.
deprecated.
Yeah, it's deprecated.
I mean,
well, it's
I've been-
deprecated in 10.14 and will go away entirely in next year.
Did they
Yes.
state that?
Oh.
Yes.
So they mean it.
They mean business.
They're not lying.
I mean, things have been deprecated for 10 years.
They said they will not be supported and they may not run.
May not.
May
Well,
May.
I'm assuming may not is
Weasel
equivalent to
words are already coming out.
Well, I mean,
No offense to weasels.
We'll see next summer, won't we?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be
Back on this stage.
Yeah, back on the stage. There we go. I like that.
See you
Matt,
guys
we're
next
coming back next year. Is that cool?
Okay, yeah.
right.
I'll book the room right away.
So one of the other things that kind of piqued my interest in, out of the keynote was the idea that, I mean, we've all had our experiences with Siri, and I say that, understanding it's a hard technology and still being like, well, it's not great right now, Bob. But Siri shortcuts and the idea of chaining tasks together in an automator-like fashion for, voice experience. And I feel good about this, and I feel like, what are the unintended consequences we aren't thinking about yet for this? So I kind of wanted to put it out for you to everybody, kind of take their temperature on what they thought about the Siri shortcuts we saw, and what you think the future of those kind of things is going to be.
I mean, as a consumer, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I can turn on all the things in my house all at the same time. Awesome. Professionally, I'm like, what's someone going to do now?
Yeah.
How can this be owned, and things like that.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear your thoughts.
Oh, I don't. Because I don't have an iPhone or use Siri even on macOS, I'm just reminded of the episode of Black Mirror with the girl trapped in the home system. Did I just spoil an episode? Anyways.
Well, there you go. Can't watch that.
Sorry. No, but
Does she die?
No.
Okay.
Yes. Am I spoiling it more? I don't know. Whatever. No, there was this really great talk at Enigma. If you've ever heard of the conference, it's one of the best conferences I went to. It's in San Francisco.
Did you hear that, Matt?
Yeah.
Ouch.
You heard it here.
Harsh.
Listen, security conference.
Best
Anyways.
conference in America.
Oh, America, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally. No, but they were talking about, there was this great speaker talking about, using voice recognition and all these Alexa and, is it listening? Did it just? And this woman who was talking, I wish I could remember her name, was just like, these are all great and good in my work life, but I am creeped out at home and I try to prevent any sort of smart technology in my life or whatever. And that's, I don't know, you have to come to terms with the fact that you've already done so much of that, and now it's just becoming a convenient thing, and I don't know how to feel, like, because I do use a lot of the Google side stuff, right? And
Sure,
like,
yeah.
I look back in my location history of where I was like 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh, this is great, and like all the photos I took and stuff, like being in security, forgetting about like the whole like, holy shit, this is creepy.
And do you have a Google Home?
That's not really swearing. It's fine.
It's not swearing if we're in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Do I have? I
You're
do
gonna
have.
get his YouTube license.
You do
bro.
have a Google Home.
I do have a Google Home, right? And I use it for more of just like the turn off my lights because I'm lazy.
You can
kind of
log in
thing.
and see like the list of all the commands you've made. To
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and
And if you can.
Yeah, hashtag security.
hashtag security.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
What?
We hopefully have to put a little bit of trust in the developers. Like, if I see Apple saying, like, we're trying to protect user privacy and stuff like that, like, and then on the same stage you're telling me that you did all these features for Siri, I'm trying to put my trust in you that you're considering my privacy as well. Like, because they've always had that platform of, we always give, like, you know, a lot of effort into caring about that. So I don't know how I feel, but I just, like, for Apple especially, they've always been on that platform of caring about privacy. You know, somebody getting in and all that kind of stuff, that's
So you're
another
getting
story.
You're getting a HomePod now, right?
No.
Have you heard that like perfect storm thing with the Alexa, and it was like recorded a conversation for
Yeah.
somebody next
Yes.
accidentally.
I unplugged my.
You're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I feel like again, this goes back to transparency, and it goes back to that, you know, the conversation between systems we don't control and our use of them. And so I feel like as IT pros and, you know, IT management, we get to be on the, you know, we're on the transparency side, right? And we've got to be aware of how our users see us as the way that they see their Alexa when it sends the transcript out there. And so that's kind of the scary bit. Now, to talk about privacy in a different way, WebKit gets some huge new features to prevent you from being tracked online. With the new version that's out. There's now a tech demo for a technology preview, I think is what it's called, for the new version of Safari that's out this week, that's available for download on High Sierra machines, so you don't have to install Mojave to get it. And the tracking prevention that they're doing as part of this, I talked to somebody who spends a lot of time building websites for marketing organizations, and they saw that and they were like, well,
Guess we're done.
To get creative.
we're gonna. It's another, you know, raise the stakes kind of moment for a lot of these things. And so, you know, we got. I take my hat off to everybody in Cupertino who's working on that.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge thing. I mean, and I of course think of this for selfish reasons, because I now shop for airline tickets in a VPN in an incognito browser window, because I've had that happen where I search for a set of plane tickets and come back to them a week later and they're like $5 higher. And so
That's
it was
it?
just enough. Well, I mean,
It's usually higher than that.
usually it's like 25 or 30, but like they're after that. They know I'm going anyway. Because they figured out, oh, Baltimore to Sacramento, yeah, he's going home to see family. Yeah, he does that 3 or 4 times a year. He's going to have to do that. And so he'll pay the extra $20 a seat each way for each leg. And, you know, you just got to suck it up and deal. And, you know, instead, it'll be nice if that's something that they're more actively preventing on the user side. So
Love it.
count me as thrilled on the new WebKit developments, which is pretty rad. So.
Yep.
I do want to read out our community calendar real quick here. We do have several events out there, and thanks very much to Watchman Monitoring for sponsoring the community calendar. And it's important to be in the know with Watchman Monitoring at watchmanmonitoring.com. Links and dates for these events can be found in the show notes. If you've got an event or a conference that you'd like us to announce or continue to promote or put out into the community, please email us at podcast@macadmins.org or go to podcast.macadmins.org/events. And I will fully out myself and say I missed one, and I'm sorry, Anthony, I know you're watching at home, my bad, that was on me. So if you have a question, say, hey, I put something in the notes, did you get it? That's totally fine, bug me like crazy on that one. So we have some conferences coming up. We're obviously here at MacDevOps, and thanks very much, Matt, and everything's been going great. We got one more day. I don't know if we can get anybody registered in time, but if they show up tomorrow with like a sheaf of money, can they come to the second day?
If you show up tomorrow and you want to come, you just let me know. And last year, I felt quite the badge of honor that somebody snuck in and made their own ticket and bluffed me past the front desk because I was like fooling with the video camera, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but cool.
Love
to
it.
sneak in. I'm like, whoa, nerd.
Awesome. So on the conference calendar, we've got X-World in Sydney, Australia, June 27th through 29th. The Penn State University MacAdmins Conference is nearly sold out, I have been told. It's happening in State College, PA, July 10th through 13th. If you haven't gotten your tickets, now would be a great time to go. MacSysAdmin in Göteborg, Sweden is October 2nd through 5th. Jamf Nation User Conference is October 23rd through 25th. MacTech Conference is in Los Angeles on November 6th through 9th. We only got a couple of meetups on the calendar. Austin Apple admins will meet at the University of Texas, Perry Castaneda Library on June 20th at 6:30 p.m. And look for a location announcement for the Apple admins of Seattle. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thanks, Anthony. Look for a location announcement for the Apple admins of Seattle meetup on for Thursday, June 21st. Ask in the Cascadia channel for more details. MacDMV will next meet in July. Time and date TBD. Ask me for more information, but not right now. If you have a place to host in DC, please come find me. We'd be happy to take advantage of that. So again, thanks very much to Watchman Monitoring. I know JD's back there. JD, thank you. And for your continued support of the MacAdmins Podcast and the MacAdmins community at large.
Thank you.
Thank you. That kind of takes me through all of our questions so far for WWDC stuff. Is there anything I didn't talk about that you've seen from, there's a great questions doc that's out there that we will make sure is in the show notes. It's a great Google Doc that's getting answers live from very smart members of the MacAdmins community who are at WWDC and asking questions in management labs and network labs and other things like that. I understand, coming from that lab, there's been some discussion that say, hey, Apple, can we get 802.11k and R and V functionality for the Wi-Fi people? And since I'm a giant Wi-Fi nerd, I'm super excited about that answer, and so I'm hopeful we'll get that out of the network labs in the next couple of days because I feel like that's been a missing piece.
Mistress.
What?
Hope is a cruel mistress.
Hope is a cruel mistress, especially in
sad.
a closed
Drink more
community.
wine.
But I'm putting it out there into the world. I'm hopeful. Just putting that out there. That's all. So there's a great doc out there. Please feel free to visit that Google Doc if you've got questions or concerns. Maybe drop some questions and concerns in that document.
Where do we find this?
We'll share it.
In the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Of course. Yeah.
So it'll be in the show notes, and of course it's all over the Slack. So check out the MacAdmins Slack.
All over the Slack, in every channel.
It is.
He posted it himself.
I spilled Wi-Fi all over my office today. It's a complete mesh.
But I'm saying, you thought it started bad. It ended worse.
So yeah. So is there anything else that you got announced at Worldwide Developers Conference that you thought was interesting that we should talk about?
I was very bummed there was not a Mac Mini announcement.
You're still waiting.
I cried a single tear.
Yeah.
One day
Okay,
there will be a new Mac Mini.
I still have XNs running with Mac Minis, so Mac Minis still yay.
We've been buying Mac Minis that we've never booted so that we can have serial numbers for DEP.
Yep.
I remember that. You're like, we're just gonna do some testing here. It's just sitting on the desk.
Yeah, I think it's still shrink wrapped.
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten that far with it. Eventually, we'll turn it into a build server or something. We have a couple of them that we have that way. There's the MDM stuff was not huge. There were some enhancements to some of the MDM commands, and now there's install enterprise application. Instead of install application, there's install enterprise application.
Whenever it installs things? Is it
I don't know if there's feedback.
Yes or no?
They just
I'm
changed
sure
the name.
Mr. Gomez will create install enterprise applications so that we can overload names yet again. But it had some cert pinning and some other pieces into it, but didn't otherwise seem to be significantly different from then what was out there.
I don't. That's the thing. I'm trying to think of everything that I watched in the last 3 hours. Trying to catch up because I missed so much of it. Right. The security stuff was great. I honestly like the best that I got out of it was just when they were mentioning non-tracking, all that kind of stuff. Just like how much it was just this power that they were like, we care about privacy, and like just constantly reiterating it in a way that like people like claps for it. Probably not as much as they clap for like, the dark mode on, whatever. Mojave,
I'm not a dark mode.
Oh, I love it. It matches my
No.
I'm team
dark
light.
laptop.
I'm team light.
I kind of want to do.
Come towards the light, Diana.
No, never.
I thought it was interesting. There's a mode in there that will essentially be light mode during the day, dark mode at night, which I'm all
Party
the
in
way
the
here
front,
for.
Good for your
business in
eyes.
the back. No, other way.
I think
No, that was your haircut.
Business
from
in the front, party in the back. Yeah, there you
I
go.
think for the creatives, the dark mode, it's like always had very dark, black colored GUIs for Final Cut, like color correction, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Colors really pop when you
Yes,
have
they
dark.
do.
Yep.
So you can't have bright mail app.
Yeah.
You need if you're going to use any other applications.
It helps your eyes too. Like it's just like, especially at night working, it's just such a strain to stare at everything that's like
Oh
white.
yeah, if I was in a terminal window all day, I totally get it.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Mic drop. I'm out.
What about walkie-talkie? That was pretty awesome.
Nextel, come on.
was it?
Notifications, I was finally.
Yeah, and as someone who will frequently, wake up in the middle of the night and be afraid to touch his phone lest I see an alert.
I thought that was a great feature.
I thought that was a nice little feature.
I like that.
Because I will be the person that gets like the down notice at like 2 a.m. that's like kind of important, but not important enough for me to
You'll
get
care too
paged.
much, yeah.
And I'll care too much and go look instead of going back to bed because none of my clients need it at 4 a.m. They just don't. Or if they did, they'd be calling me and it would break through my do not disturb anyway.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of looking forward to getting some of that focus back without having to worry about it. I'll be very interested to tinker with that. And, a lot of the people that I've talked to about the iOS 12 beta have said beta 1 is probably the best beta 1 that Apple's had in a couple of years. And so that's, of course, making me think, let me put that on my daily carry phone, which is completely stupid, and you should stop me before I do that, friends. But that said, when I get home, I'm probably going to do it anyway. So
You let us know.
I'm kind of looking forward to that. And I'm kind of looking forward to grouped messages and grouped alerts and, an easier status window.
I want to get 31 friends one day for FaceTime.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Do I have
would be
31
epic.
friends?
You could be. We could
Well,
be.
we could all do it
Hello?
in here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know how
Next
many
time
people
the
there are here.
podcast would do FaceTime, right? With
we
koalas
might do
and
that with
comic
some
book.
Memoji.
No Memojis.
Unicorns.
Everyone gets their
Yeah.
own Memoji.
Yeah, unicorns.
But I will be a T-Rex. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
You're gonna
Me
have
too,
long
Rex.
hair in yours.
I will be a sparkling blonde Americano. I don't know what that.
My kids are going to have to buy iPhone 10s now.
Yeah.
It's
talk to
terrible.
you.
I'm going to have to keep working forever.
Forever, till the end of time.
So this takes us to our bonus question, and there was, of course, all of the rumor people were right about Marzipan on some level, in that some version of iOS apps are going to be living on the Mac at some point in the future, or at least there will be an option to code against that base at some point in the future. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but. Suppose for a moment you can take any app from your iPhone or iOS device, iPad, sorry Diana, and move it to your Mac. What do you take with you? What are you most excited about moving from iOS to macOS? Matt, do you have any good ideas here?
I have a ton of apps that I use on my phone, like Slack, that I do not use on my desktop at all. There's certain things that just live on my phone, and I just make sure that they don't live on my Mac, so I don't want them on there. I don't open Slack as a desktop app, and I don't use
Interesting.
it there ever. It's just if I can type it on my phone, then it goes. If I don't, forget it, I'm not going.
Wow.
Because my Mac is for real work.
Was
We
that
use
big
Slack
on
at
Slack?
work, so what does that mean?
I don't know.
Okay, good. Carry on.
For what it's worth, I envy you.
The iPhone is a communication device. It's a two-thumb tapper.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Type. I don't know.
Dana?
I'm trying to think. I'm in the same.
Look at my phone.
I'm in the
Stocks.
same boat where I have specific, all the social stuff. I only
James told me
look
not to
on,
look at my phone.
my phone for. Everything else already has a Mac app. Things I use a lot has. There's a Mac app for that. Yeah, I think it's more from a management perspective. If you're able to manage cross-platform like that, I don't know. If there was some sort of Surface Book thing, Mac touchscreen that had sort of this hybrid Mac, iOS
You'd be excited about that?
You'd
be intrigued.
I would be intrigued, Joel. I would be intrigued. I'd probably tinker with it. I have a little like iPad mini that everyone makes fun of me for, that I bring to meetings once in a while to like not have that big laptop. Moon hates it. My whole team makes fun of me for it.
Why?
I don't know. It's cute. It's tiny.
iPad mini. Right?
Yeah, I don't do my little 2-thumb Slack. I have to have like all
Do you
10
bring a
fingers.
keyboard with
Like a
it?
keyboard.
Yeah, it's a little keyboard.
Yeah, a little.
That's adorable.
All right.
That kind of,
Mini
well,
keyboard.
never mind.
What do you think, Joel? What would you want to move
I don't
around?
know. There was an interesting thought, and there are, like, I have some apps on the phone that replicate a web page on the Mac, and I find the app on the phone to be a little bit easier because I don't have to fish around a big web page. I don't have to see a bunch of banner images scrolling by and things like that, and I can get straight to it. But then I don't know that. I mean, I feel like we'd be bringing back widgets, and I'm not excited about that. And there's a reason why I used a phone for those functions, kind of like what Matt was talking about, that it's not just the app, it's the form factor, and it's...
And tactile, right? Like,
And tactile.
That's the thing. I have a hard time even thinking, like, outside of not having an iPhone, like, that's why I'm, like, looking at my phone going, what app would I want to see in there? But I'm like, most of the ones that I love are because they're tactile, because they're interactive with, not using a keyboard and a mouse. Like, that's why I'm struggling to find something, unless you had something like a touch screen or something, and I could tell you, like, 1,000,001, apps for drawing that are really great on, that are really lightweight and should be migrated over, if you had that, kind of ease of use, but they're done in a way that it makes sense to have them on a mobile platform. Like, that's why I'm struggling.
Yep.
Yeah.
The iPhone's a great communication device.
Yeah.
And I struggle when someone sends me a PDF and I save the PDF in iBooks because that's one of the options, and then I go to send it to someone else, but I can't get the PDF out of iBooks into an attachment because it just doesn't work. So now I have to go to my Mac just to like get the PDF that I'm like. Okay.
Some of them are not so intuitive. Yeah.
And mine is dumb, and I kind of want to go the other way. And the app that I really want from my Mac on my iOS device is Wi-Fi Explorer Pro. I want to be able to like query the Wi-Fi stack live, standing like right here, so that I don't have to be like an idiot with the laptop kind of held up in the middle of the air. I'd much rather have
That's
the
cool.
iOS device and do it that way. And yeah, there are Lightning-based spec-ends and a bunch of those tools and stuff like that. That would be kind of neat, but they're just it's just not there. And what I really want is Wi-Fi Explorer on my iPad, and that I can go to town with. But if I got to go the other way, I love Trello's app for iOS, and I like it so much better in iOS than I do on macOS. And if that was the view I had of Trello, woo! Yeah, I mean, because that's how all of the scheduling and stuff and like the task management for the podcast gets done is in Trello. I live in Trello just for that.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I want, is that little column that will just show me the schedule. So it'd be like, show me the upcoming schedule so that I know our next guests are A, B, C, D, and E, and who's confirmed and who's not, and all of those things, as well as tracking some of the other business side things that we have to do.
So would you say that what you're looking for is more like the toggle button for like show me mobile version?
Yes.
Because then it would
Yep.
work, but make it sort of in a way where it does work with a mouse and keyboard, but like have the option of mobile version.
Well, right, and one of the trends that I hate out of web development shops these days is like, hey, I have Safari on my iPad. Why are you showing me some terrible mobile interface instead of what I really want, which is this version of Safari on my iPad?
Yeah.
And it's perfectly acceptable. So I mean, if I can rail my DevOps hat for a second and say, build good interfaces for computers that work on iPads too, instead of defaulting me to some bass-ackwards, half-baked solution for that. So that's my rant for the day. I'm done ranting now.
Let's end on a positive note and say that we heard lots of great solutions to lots of workflows today.
Yeah,
It's very, very awesome.
It was very awesome.
It was a really great day, Matt. And it was funny, the thing that I learned today that I didn't know that I probably should have known prior to today was that you can have script workflows in MonkeyAdmin that execute on save, that are like post-save workflows.
I did not know that either.
I did not know that, and I have been doing it manually like some kind of animal
Not a monkey.
to do my uploads into the cloud that way.
I think learning from our peers is the best.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
community.
everyone can teach us, and we can teach other people, and we can just share little tidbits, and I love that.
And I think that it's so important for everybody to realize if you're here, if you're not here, you have something to contribute. Every single person who is in this room has contributed in some way to this conference today, whether that's hallway track or at lunchtime or in quick talks and things like that. And I want to thank you, Matt, for building a place that is like that. Because we saw an incredible group of speakers today, whether they were giving 5-minute talks, 30-minute deep dives, a longer keynote and things like that. And thank you, because I learned more here. This stretches me more than any other conference I go to.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you. So I think that about does it for the MacAdmins podcast here at MacDevOps. Thanks very much to our awesome audience. Audience, give yourself a round of applause.
Are we going back to Henry?
Henry, do you have a word for us? All right.
So sad.
Wow.
I think half of the watchers were just
camera guy, Derek.
Thanks,
Whitehead.
Derek.
Yeah.
Derek, our streaming engineer, and our camera technician, and our audio engineer, thank you so much for helping out. James says thank you. Mostly because he doesn't have to edit this now, which is delightful. And so if you're hearing this in the feed a couple of days later, we'll probably be putting this up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, someplace in there, based on getting the audio results back from everything. So Matt, thank you so much for your hospitality. We've got another day of the conference, so we'll see you all back tomorrow. Dana, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks always for the awesomeness that is Slack.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Joel, thanks for coming on.
Woohoo! Happy to be here.
And we'll be thrilled to have you on again soon because you seem to be our most recurring guest at this point.
Oh, that's so
So
that's a good
we'll figure out
Let's
the
go
green
hack.
jacket at some point. So.
I'd like a green jacket.
Can't be master's green though, so it'll be like the green of the little green, the maximize button.
Okay.
In the Finder, I'll see what I can
That's a
do.
fine green.
I wanted to make the Siri sound.
I'll see what I can do.
Just like a button somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and Diana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. It was
And
fun.
your awesome new title.
You'll get a new one next week.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. So thanks very much. This has been another fine episode of the MacAdmins Podcast. Thanks very much to our presenting sponsor, VMware, and to our supporting sponsor, Spoke, and to our community sponsor, Watchman Monitoring. And we will see you next time. And of course, now I say, go Caps! Yay!